My name is Johnny Walker, 68 years old and retired from 40 years of construction work in Chicago. When my wife Marie and I adopted Amanda 30 years ago, we never imagined I'd one day be standing in an upscale restaurant, watching her sneer at a humble elderly man. "This table's for important people. Go find another one," she told him, her wealthy friends laughing as the waiter handed me their $3,000 bill. But when a deep voice spoke from behind me, the entire table fell silent. "Where are you watching from today? Drop it in the comments and subscribe for more life lessons from an old man's journey." I grew up in Chicago's South Side, where my father worked in a steel mill and my mother cleaned houses for wealthy families along Lakeshore Drive. We lived in a small apartment above a grocery store, the smell of fresh bread each morning serving as my alarm clock. I learned the value of hard work early, delivering newspapers at age 12 and saving every nickel I earned. By 18, I had joined a construction crew, starting as the guy who carried materials and cleaned up after the skilled workers. I watched, I listened, I learned. By 25, I was a foreman. My calloused hands were my resume, my knowledge of building foundations, my greatest asset. I met Marie Donovan in the summer of '77 at a community picnic. She was helping at the face painting booth, her dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, her smile lighting up the park. I stood in line 3 times, each time requesting a different design, just to talk to her a few minutes more. On my 3rd visit, she wrote her phone number on my palm along with a small heart. We married the following spring, in a modest ceremony at her parents' church. Our honeymoon was 3 days at a cabin in Wisconsin that my uncle owned. Simple beginnings, but we were rich in dreams. Marie wanted 4 children, a house filled with noise and laughter. I promised her I'd build that house myself someday. The first year was bliss. We saved for a down payment on a small fixer-upper in a decent neighborhood. I worked my regular construction job during the day and spent evenings and weekends repairing our home. Marie took nursing classes at the community college. By our 3rd anniversary, we were trying for a baby. 6 months passed, then a year. Marie's usually bright smile dimmed a little with each negative test. After 18 months, we saw a doctor who ran tests and suggested treatments we could barely afford. We scraped together money for the first round of fertility drugs. Marie suffered through the side effects, with hope in her eyes. The first pregnancy came after 2 years of trying. Marie was 8 weeks along when she woke up crying, blood staining our sheets. The second miscarriage happened at 12 weeks, the third at 16. Each loss carved lines of grief around Marie's eyes that no amount of smiles could erase. After the 3rd miscarriage, her doctor advised against further pregnancies. Marie was devastated. For weeks, she moved through our home like a ghost, touching the empty room we had started to prepare as a nursery. It was Marie who first mentioned adoption. We researched agencies, attended information sessions, filled out mountains of paperwork. Our modest income and small home worked against us, but our stable marriage and Marie's nursing degree helped our case. The waiting list was long. Years passed. Marie repainted the spare room 3 times. We received the call on a Tuesday. A 5-year-old girl needed a home. Her teenage mother had abandoned her with a neighbor and never returned. The little girl had bounced between foster homes for 3 years. Could we come meet her? Amanda sat quietly in the agency office, her small legs dangling from a chair too tall for her. Her brown hair was pulled into uneven pigtails. She watched us with wary eyes that had seen too much disappointment for someone so young. Marie kneeled before her. "Hello, Amanda. I like your shoes. They light up when you walk, right? That must be fun." Amanda nodded cautiously, then deliberately stomped one foot to demonstrate the flashing lights. Marie's face lit up with genuine delight, and something magic happened. Amanda smiled back, a small, tentative curve of her lips. I remember driving home that day, Marie clutching the agency paperwork. "That's our daughter, Johnny," she whispered. "I just know it." The next 6 months were a whirlwind of home studies, background checks, and parenting classes. I worked extra shifts to save for the adoption fees. At night, I secretly built a bookshelf shaped like a castle for Amanda's room. Marie found a quilt with butterflies, remembering Amanda had pointed to one in a book during our third visit. The day we brought her home, Amanda carried a small backpack containing everything she owned. 3 worn outfits, a toothbrush, a stuffed rabbit missing one ear. I carried her across our threshold, Marie walking beside us with tears tracking silently down her cheeks. Those first months, Amanda would hide food under her mattress. She flinched at loud noises. She asked permission to use the bathroom. Every night, she needed reassurance that we would still be there in the morning. Marie taught her to read at our kitchen table. I took her to construction sites on Saturday mornings, letting her wear my hard hat while I explained how buildings stand strong because of what you can't see, the foundation beneath. Gradually, Amanda blossomed. She made friends at school. She stopped checking that the front door was locked before bedtime. She called us Mom and Dad without hesitation. When Amanda turned 10, she won the school science fair. At 12, she was playing soccer and taking piano lessons. At 14, she was popular, smart, seemingly well-adjusted despite her difficult start. We had our traditions. Sunday drives to get ice cream. Christmas Eve when we each opened one present. Movie nights where we took turns choosing the film. Then Marie found the lump. She was 42, Amanda 15. Breast cancer. Aggressive. The treatments were brutal. Amanda stepped up, helping with meals, sitting with Marie during chemo sessions, reading to her when the nausea subsided enough for concentration. There was a brief, precious remission. We took a family trip to the Grand Canyon, Marie still thin but her hair growing back in soft curls. Amanda took dozens of photos, carefully arranging us for each shot, determined to capture every moment of happiness. 6 months later, the cancer returned. This time, it had spread. Marie fought hard, but her body was already weakened from the first battle. In her final weeks, she made me promise that Amanda would have every opportunity, every chance at a good life. At the funeral, Amanda stood beside me, dry-eyed and straight-backed. She wore the pearl earrings Marie had left her, small luminous dots against her dark hair. She was 16, suddenly without a mother. Our home felt hollow in the months that followed. I worked double shifts, partly for the money, partly to escape the emptiness. Amanda threw herself into schoolwork, her grades impeccable. She joined more clubs, spent more time with friends, came home later. We orbited each other like planets with diverging paths. When Amanda received a scholarship to a prestigious university 3 states away, my pride was genuine but tinged with sadness. The day I helped her move into her dormitory, I felt my purpose slipping away along with my daughter. Her visits home became shorter, less frequent. Her calls came weekly, then monthly, then only on holidays. Her voice changed, adopting new phrases and references I didn't understand. She spoke of professors and theories and peers whose backgrounds were nothing like ours. Once, during her sophomore year, she brought a roommate home for a weekend. I overheard her in the kitchen, explaining to her friend in an apologetic tone, "My dad's a construction worker. He never had the chance for college." It was the first time I realized my daughter might be embarrassed by me. After graduate school, Amanda landed an internship at a prestigious financial firm. She moved in circles of wealth I could hardly imagine. Her calls now included references to weekend trips to exotic locations, expensive restaurants, designer names. When she called asking if I could help with the down payment on a condo in an exclusive neighborhood, I sold our family home, the place where Marie and I had built our life, where Amanda had grown up. I moved to a small apartment and sent her the difference. Amanda married Edward Harrington 3 years later. His family owned banking interests across the Midwest. At the wedding reception, I was seated at a table with distant cousins and workplace acquaintances, far from the main party. I danced one brief dance with my daughter, then watched her return to her new world. As the years passed, Amanda's calls came only on birthdays and Christmas, always hurried. I followed her rising career through social media posts, proud of her success but increasingly aware of the widening gulf between us. When I tried to visit, there were polite excuses. Her life was busy. They were renovating. They had plans. I still held hope that the loving child I had raised was there somewhere, beneath the polished exterior. That one day, Something would bridge the distance between us. I never imagined it would be a dinner invitation that would shatter all my illusions about who my daughter had become. The text from Amanda arrived on a Thursday afternoon in April. I was fixing a leak under my kitchen sink when my phone chimed. Seeing her name on the screen made my heart leap. We hadn't spoken since a brief Christmas call 4 months earlier. "Dad, we're celebrating my 35th birthday at Somerset House next Friday, 7:30. Can you make it?" Somerset House was the kind of restaurant I had only seen in magazines. White tablecloths, crystal stemware, waiters in formal attire. I typed my reply with damp fingers, not even drying my hands first for fear the invitation might somehow vanish if I waited. "Absolutely. Looking forward to it." I marked the date on my calendar, drawing a star beside it. For the next 2 weeks, anticipation built inside me like a carefully constructed wall, brick by brick of hope. Perhaps this was the beginning of reconciliation, a chance to reconnect with my daughter. My pension from the Construction Workers Union provided enough for my modest needs, but not for luxuries. Still, I withdrew $300 from my savings. The next day, I visited Macy's, a store I normally avoided due to its prices. "I need something appropriate for Somerset House," I told the young sales clerk, feeling out of place among the mannequins wearing outfits that cost more than my monthly rent. The clerk was kind, guiding me toward a blazer that wouldn't immediately mark me as not belonging. "This blue will bring out your eyes," she said, helping me find matching trousers. I added a new shirt and tie, spending more on a single outfit than I had in the past 3 years combined. Back home, I found a shoebox containing old photographs. Amanda at 7, missing her front teeth, proudly holding a soccer trophy. Amanda at 12, her science fair project on earthquake-resistant buildings, inspired by our Sunday visits to my construction sites. Amanda at 16, in the black dress she wore to Marie's funeral, her face a mask of control. The week before the dinner, I visited Tony at the barbershop where I had been getting my hair cut for 30 years. As he trimmed my increasingly gray hair, I told him about the invitation. "My daughter invited me to her birthday dinner at Somerset House." Tony whistled through his teeth. "Fancy place. Rich folks' territory. Amanda's done very well for herself," I said. A reflexive defense. "Just be careful, Johnny. Money changes people, not always for the better." I dismissed his concerns. This was Amanda, after all. My daughter, who had once waited up all night when I had a fever, bringing me cool washcloths and reading aloud from her school books to distract me. I took my 15-year-old truck for detailing, joking with the young worker about dressing up the old man for a night on the town. At home, I practiced using unfamiliar utensils, watching YouTube videos on fine dining etiquette. I researched the restaurant menu online, silently practicing the pronunciation of dishes with French names. I even looked up Amanda's company website, studying the projects she had led, so I could ask intelligent questions about her work. I found recent photos of her at charity galas, her smile practiced and perfect, her evening gowns likely costing more than my annual property taxes. Pride mixed with anxiety. Would I embarrass her? Could I find a way to reconnect across the chasm that had grown between us? The night before the dinner, I laid out my new clothes, shined my shoes until they gleamed, and trimmed my mustache with careful precision. Sleep evaded me. I tossed and turned, rehearsing conversation topics in my head. The evening of the dinner, I left my apartment an hour early. The restaurant was only 20 minutes away in good traffic, but I wanted to allow time to find parking. I circled the blocks near Somerset House 3 times before finding a spot 8 blocks away that wouldn't require taking out a loan to pay the parking fee. I sat in my truck for 15 minutes, gathering courage, watching well-dressed patrons enter the restaurant's grand doors. The last time I had taken Amanda to what we considered a fancy restaurant was her 16th birthday, shortly after Marie's death. We had gone to the Olive Garden. Amanda had ordered the most expensive pasta dish, and we had splurged on tiramisu for dessert. At exactly 7:15, I walked into Somerset House. The marble floors gleamed beneath crystal chandeliers. The host, a young man in a tailored suit, gave my blazer a quick assessment, his expression shifting almost imperceptibly. "Good evening, sir. Do you have a reservation? I'm meeting my daughter's party. Amanda Harrington? At the name Harrington, his demeanor changed subtly. He checked his tablet. Ah yes, the Harrington party. They've reserved our medallion room. Follow me, please. He led me to a private dining area, where a table was set for 12. Crystal glasses caught the light from a chandelier overhead. Fresh flowers arranged in a low centerpiece allowed for conversation across the table. I was the first to arrive. Would you like something to drink while you wait, sir? The host asked. Just water. Thank you. For the next 45 minutes, I sat alone at the empty table, nursing my single glass of water. Occasional glances from servers and other diners made my neck warm with self-consciousness. I checked my phone repeatedly, wondering if I had somehow misunderstood the time. At 8:20, nearly an hour after the scheduled time, I heard familiar laughter. Amanda entered with Edward and 8 other people, all dressed in evening wear that probably cost more than my yearly expenses. My daughter wore a designer dress, her hair styled in an elegant updo. She moved with confidence, the restaurant clearly familiar territory. When she spotted me, her smile faltered for just a fraction of a second before resuming its perfect curve. She approached and leaned down to brush her cheek against mine in a perfunctory kiss. Everyone, this is Johnny, she said, making no mention of our relationship. No introduction as her father. The realization struck like a hammer blow. These people, her friends, didn't know who I was. She had invited me but had not told them I was her father. Edward offered a distracted handshake, his attention already returning to a conversation with a tall man about golf memberships. Amanda's friends nodded in my direction but made no effort at conversation as they arranged themselves around the table. I found myself seated at the far end, as if I were an afterthought to the gathering. As champagne was poured for everyone at the table except me, I studied my daughter's face, searching for the girl I had raised. Her features were the same, yet somehow rearranged into someone I barely recognized. Still, I clung to hope that the evening would warm up, that Amanda had good intentions in including me in her celebration. Perhaps she was simply distracted by her guests now but would make time for me later. I could not have imagined how wrong I was. Champagne flowed freely at the table, though I had to request a glass from a passing server since no one had thought to order one for me. Amanda's friends were discussing a recent group trip to the Maldives, comparing the merits of various luxury resorts. The underwater restaurant at Conrad was absolutely transcendent, said a woman with a diamond necklace that caught the light with every movement. Though the service at our private villa could have been more attentive, I searched for a way to join the conversation. I once took Amanda camping at Lake Michigan. We caught our own dinner and cooked it over a fire. There was a momentary pause, an awkward silence, before someone smoothly changed the subject. Amanda shot me a tight smile and a subtle shake of her head. The message was clear. Such memories were not welcome here. The first course arrived with elaborate presentation, something with truffles and gold leaf, the server announcing each component as if introducing royalty. I reached for what I thought was the appropriate fork, but Amanda quickly and discreetly slid a different one in my direction. My face warmed with embarrassment as I switched utensils, now carefully watching others to match their movements. Amanda tells us the Davis account is nearly finalized, said a man with perfectly groomed silver hair. The final paperwork should be signed next week, she replied, her voice taking on a crisp, professional tone I rarely heard. It will be the largest acquisition our firm has managed this quarter. Carlyle must be pleased, another woman commented. He's already hinted at a directorship opening, Amanda said, a satisfied smile playing at her lips. A woman with sharp features turned to me. And what did you do before retiring, Johnny? Johnny, I corrected gently. I worked in construction, 40 years with Lakeside Builders. Started as a laborer and worked my way up to project manager. How fascinating, she replied with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, immediately turning to resume her previous conversation. As the meal progressed, I became increasingly aware of being an outsider in this gathering. I reached for my water glass and overheard Amanda speaking to someone at the other end of the table. Johnny was a family friend who helped out after my parents died. The words hit me like a physical blow. Family friend, not her father, the man who had raised her for 30 years, reduced to an acquaintance. In that moment, I understood that Amanda had not merely grown distant, she had actively erased our relationship. An elderly waiter with stooped shoulders noticed my expression. When he returned to the table, he discreetly placed a small plate before me. "A special appetizer from the chef," he said quietly. "The mushroom pâté is particularly good tonight." "Why does he get something special?" Amanda asked, her tone sharp. "My apologies, madam. Would you like one prepared as well?" the waiter asked. "Never mind," she said dismissively. "We need another bottle of the Cristal." The conversation turned to Amanda's recent promotion. Her friends offered congratulations, several mentioning the name Thomas Williams. "Having Williams personally request you for the executive team is practically unheard of," said the silver-haired man. "The man is a legend." "A reclusive legend," added another woman. "He started as a dishwasher, before building the restaurant empire." "Ancient history." Amanda waved her hand. "He's worth billions now. That's what matters." I leaned forward, wanting to express my pride in her accomplishments. Amanda always had determination, even as a child. Once she set her mind to something, she cut me off mid-sentence. "Speaking of determination, did I tell you about my graduate school mentor? He's just been appointed to the Federal Reserve Board." The elderly waiter returned with wine service. His hands trembled slightly as he poured for one of Amanda's friends, a woman with platinum blonde hair and sharp features. A few drops splashed onto the sleeve of her cream-colored blouse. "Do you know how much this blouse cost?" she snapped, dabbing at the fabric with her napkin. "I sincerely apologize, madam," the waiter said, his weathered face creasing with distress. "The service here is usually impeccable," Amanda added, her voice cold. "This is disappointing." I watched the waiter's shoulders hunch further under their criticism. He reminded me of my own father, who had worked well into his 70s because his pension wasn't enough to live on. "These things happen," I said quietly. "No harm done." My comment was met with cold stares from around the table. The waiter gave me a grateful glance before retreating. The main course arrived with elaborate presentation, the server lifting silver domes in synchronized movements to reveal artfully arranged portions that seemed too beautiful to eat. The discussion shifted to an upcoming charity gala. "The tables start at $10,000 this year," Edward mentioned, swirling his wine. "We've taken a platinum sponsorship. 100,000. I nearly choked on my water. $100,000. More than 3 years of my pension. The amount I had saved over a lifetime of physical labor, spent on a single night of networking and showing off. Amanda noticed my expression and misinterpreted it. "Don't worry about understanding these events, Johnny. They're just part of our world. Our world, not mine." The distinction was crystal clear. The waiter returned, accompanied by the manager, offering complimentary desserts as an apology for the wine incident. The platinum blonde woman, whom I now knew was named Lauren, refused hers with a sniff. "I don't accept apologies with calories," she said. As the evening progressed, the group grew louder, fueled by expensive wine and self-importance. I noticed other diners glancing disapprovingly in our direction. I found myself shrinking in my chair, speaking less and less. At one point, I realized Amanda hadn't spoken directly to me in over 30 minutes. I excused myself to visit the restroom, more to escape the table than out of necessity. Standing before the mirror, I studied my reflection. My new blazer suddenly seemed ill-fitting despite its price tag. My calloused hands looked out of place against the marble countertop. For a moment, I considered leaving early, making an excuse about not feeling well, but I stayed, clinging to the hope that Amanda might find a moment to speak with me privately, to acknowledge our relationship, to show some sign of the daughter I had raised. When I returned to the table, they were ordering another round of champagne to celebrate Amanda's recent acquisition of a client from a competing firm. The elderly waiter had been joined by another older man in simple clothes, helping clear plates despite not wearing the formal attire of the other servers. The maitre d' approached this plainly dressed man with unusual deference, speaking quietly to him as they both surveyed the dining room. Something about this interaction caught my attention, but before I could process it, the evening took its final, painful turn. The restaurant had filled completely during our meal, every table occupied with well-dressed patrons. The host was leading the plainly dressed elderly man toward an empty table that had just been prepared near our party. He walked slowly but with dignity, his simple clothes clean but clearly worn with age. Amanda noticed him approaching and frowned, leaning over to whisper something to Lauren. I caught fragments about standards, slipping, and dress code. Lauren nodded with a superior smile. The host was pulling out a chair for the elderly man at the neighboring table when Amanda raised her voice, clearly intending to be heard. Edward, don't you know anyone on the membership committee here? I thought Somerset House was more selective. Her voice carried in the momentary lull of conversation. The elderly man paused, his hand on the back of the chair the host had prepared for him. The entire table quieted as Amanda turned directly to our waiter. Excuse me, she said, her voice cutting through the ambient noise of the restaurant. The waiter approached reluctantly. Yes, madam. Amanda gestured toward the elderly man. Her next words emerged crystal clear, delivered with perfect diction and unmistakable disdain. This table's for important people. Go find him another one. Her friends snickered. Edward smirked. Lauren nodded approvingly. The elderly man stood perfectly still, having clearly heard every syllable. The waiter looked deeply uncomfortable, caught between customers. It's quite all right, the elderly man said quietly. I can sit elsewhere. This only encouraged Amanda's friends, several now openly laughing at the man's discomfort. I felt my face burning with shame, not for myself, but for what my daughter had become. I watched the elderly man's dignified response to her cruelty, and something shifted inside me. A lifetime of memories flashed through my mind. Marie's voice seeming to whisper in my ear. We raised her better than this. My hands gripped my napkin beneath the table as I made my decision. Slowly, I stood up, the napkin falling forgotten to the floor. The conversation at the table halted as they noticed me rise. Amanda, I said, my voice shaking slightly. That's no way to speak to anyone. Her eyes widened in shock before narrowing dangerously. Sit down, Johnny. You don't understand how these establishments work. Edward placed a warning hand on Amanda's arm, something in my expression apparently concerning him. The elderly man had turned to watch our interaction, his expression unreadable. I understand basic human decency, I replied, remaining on my feet. Amanda waved her hand dismissively. We'll discuss your sensitivities later. In that moment, I saw my daughter clearly, perhaps for the first time in years. The little girl who had once cried over an injured bird, who had spent her allowance buying lunch for a classmate who couldn't afford it, was gone. In her place sat a stranger wearing my daughter's face. I reached for my wallet, preparing to excuse myself. I could no longer sit at this table pretending that this behavior was acceptable, even from my own child. The waiter approached with the leather check presenter, his expression apologetic as he placed it before me. Amanda and her friends immediately developed intense interest in their phones, the universal signal that they had no intention of reaching for the bill. Amanda gave me an expectant glance. Edward studiously examined a water spot on the ceiling. I opened the folder and felt my stomach drop. $3,428.76. More than 3 months of my pension. The shock must have shown on my face. We should think about our next reservation, Amanda said casually to the table, as if we were discussing the weather rather than an amount that would leave me unable to pay for heating this winter. In that moment, I understood the true nature of the invitation. I had been invited as a wallet, not as a father. The realization broke something inside me, a final thread of hope that had survived all the previous disappointments. My hands trembled as I stared at the amount. Despite everything, some ingrained sense of responsibility made me reach for my credit card. The elderly waiter stood by, compassion in his eyes as he witnessed my distress. The silence felt perfect and heavy as I began to slide the card from my wallet. Then a firm voice spoke from behind me. That won't be necessary. All heads turned toward the voice. The elderly man in simple clothes now stood beside our table, his presence somehow commanding despite his unassuming appearance. Amanda's expression shifted from surprise to annoyed. Excuse me, this is a private party. The man's response was calm and measured. I'm Thomas Williams. I believe we have a meeting tomorrow, Miss Harrington. The color drained from Amanda's face. Edward choked on his champagne. coughing violently while the silver-haired man pounded his back. Lauren whispered, "Oh my God," to the woman beside her, suddenly finding her napkin fascinating. Thomas Williams, the reclusive billionaire who owned not just Somerset House but 30 other exclusive restaurants across the country. The man whose company Amanda had been trying to impress for months. The man who had personally requested her for his executive team. Williams took the bill folder from my hand. With gentle firmness, "I insist on covering this. Consider it a business expense." He signaled to the maitre d', who hurried over to take the folder. Amanda's recovery was swift but transparent. Her smile appeared like a mask being affixed to her face. "Mr. Williams, we had no idea your casual attire. We thought, I find people show their true nature when they don't know who's watching," Williams replied, his tone conversational but his eyes sharp with assessment. "I visit each of my restaurants once a month, dressed like this. A tradition I started 40 years ago when I opened my first location." He paused, his gaze traveling around the table before returning to Amanda. "I've always valued people who built their success on character, not connections." The emphasis on character was subtle but unmistakable. Amanda's laugh was brittle. "I hope you don't misunderstand what was clearly a joke between friends." Williams ignored her comment, turning instead to me. "And you are, sir?" "Johnny Walker, Amanda's father." Several of her friends' eyes widened in shock. One woman's hand flew to her mouth. Edward's head snapped toward Amanda, his expression thunderous. "Adoptive father," Amanda quickly clarified, her voice high and strained. "From my early childhood." If she expected Williams to dismiss me based on this qualification, she was mistaken. His handshake was warm and genuine. "A pleasure to meet a fellow self-made man. I started as a dishwasher after returning from Vietnam. Worked construction for a while before restaurants, actually." "Commercial or residential?" I asked, finding unexpected common ground. "Both. Started with residential. Moved to commercial when I could handle bigger crews. Nothing teaches leadership like managing 20 different subcontractors with conflicting schedules." I laughed genuinely for the first time that evening. "And dealing with inspectors who seemed to visit only during lunch breaks." William's smile reached his eyes. "Exactly." Amanda watched our easy rapport with visible discomfort, her worlds colliding in a way she clearly found threatening. Edward attempted to insert himself into the conversation with comments about his father's real estate developments, but Williams politely acknowledged him before returning his attention to me. The matron approached with the signed bill. Williams had added a handwritten note at the bottom, which I glimpsed briefly. A very generous tip for the service staff. "Miss Harrington," Williams said, turning back to Amanda, "I was looking forward to our meeting tomorrow regarding the executive position you were being considered for." No one at the table missed his use of past tense. Amanda's hands began to shake slightly, though her smile remained fixed in place. "Leadership in my organization requires many qualities," Williams continued. "Financial acumen, certainly. Strategic thinking, of course. But character and integrity are essential. Non-negotiable, in fact." Amanda swallowed hard. Edward stared at the tablecloth. Williams turned back to me. "Would you join me for coffee at my personal table? I'd like to hear more about your construction experience." The invitation clearly excluded Amanda and her party. I found myself at a crossroads, looking at my daughter's panicked face. For a moment, I felt the old pull of paternal protection, the instinct to sacrifice my own interests for hers. But something had fundamentally changed tonight. The cord that had bound us had finally frayed beyond repair. "I'd be honored, Mr. Williams." "Thomas, please." My father was Mr. Williams. Amanda's hand shot out, gripping my wrist beneath the table. "Don't you dare walk away," she whispered fiercely. I gently removed her hand. "You already did that, years ago." With that, I followed Williams toward a private dining area at the back of the restaurant. As we walked away, I heard the awkward silence at the table behind us breaking into urgent whispers. Edward's angry voice carried faintly. "You told me he was a family friend." The maitre d' opened a door to a small, elegant room with a single table. Williams gestured for me to take a seat as a server immediately appeared with coffee service. As the door closed behind us, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders, even as a different kind of heaviness settled in my heart. Williams and I spent nearly 2 hours in that private dining room, sharing coffee and conversation that flowed with surprising ease. He asked thoughtful questions about my construction career, listening with genuine interest to stories of projects I had managed and challenges I had overcome. 40 years in construction, he mused. That's a legacy of tangible achievement. You can drive around your city and point to the evidence of your life's work. I never thought of it that way, I admitted. But yes, there's something satisfying about seeing a building standing strong, knowing your hands helped create it. Williams shared stories of his own journey, the early years of 16-hour days, the risks taken and lessons learned. He spoke of his children with a mixture of pride and resignation that resonated with my own experience. My oldest hasn't spoken to me in 5 years, he confided. Thinks the money should have come to him without the work. Never understood that success means nothing if you forget where you came from. I found myself admitting my failures with Amanda. I wonder where I went wrong. We gave her everything we could. Sometimes that's the problem, Williams replied. My father made me work summer jobs starting at 14, said calluses build character. I resented it then, but he was right. I tried to teach Amanda the value of hard work. My wife and I both did. But somewhere along the way, children make their own choices, Williams said. All we can do is show them the path. They decide whether to walk it. As the evening ended, Williams handed me his personal business card with his private number handwritten on the back. I meant what I said about character. If you're ever interested in consulting on a construction project, call me directly. I drove home through the dark Chicago streets, my phone lighting up repeatedly with texts from Amanda. I set it aside, needing time to process the evening's events before responding. In my small apartment, I sat in the darkness, memories washing over me like waves. Amanda, at 8, crying because she had accidentally broken a vase Marie loved. Instead of lying, she had confessed immediately, offering to use her allowance to replace it. The dollhouse I built for her 10th birthday, her eyes wide with delight as she explored each tiny room. Her high school graduation, where she had hugged me tightly before running off to join her friends. The gradual erosion of our relationship, so subtle I hardly noticed, until the distance had become a chasm. Morning brought more texts, their tone shifting from anger to threats. You've completely sabotaged my career. Hope you're satisfied. Edward's family is furious. Do you have any idea what you've done? Edward called around noon, his tone conciliatory but his message clear. Amanda's promotion was under review following the incident. He suggested I call Williams to clarify that Amanda's behavior had been uncharacteristic. I felt the old familiar guilt, the parental instinct to protect my child from consequences, but alongside it grew a new clarity. I had not created this situation, and enabling Amanda's behavior hadn't helped her become a better person. It had only postponed the inevitable confrontation with reality. Days passed. I avoided responding, needing time to think. Williams called to check on me. How are you holding up? He asked. Processing, I replied honestly, trying to figure out where we go from here. Sometimes the healthiest boundaries are the hardest to set, he said, especially with family. The following Sunday, I visited Marie's grave, bringing fresh flowers and my troubled heart. I sat beside her headstone, talking aloud as if she could hear me. I don't know what to do about Amanda Marie. She's so far from the girl we raised. I want to help her, but I'm not sure what help looks like anymore. The cemetery remained silent, but as the spring breeze rustled through nearby trees, I felt a sense of calm settling over me. Marie would have wanted me to love Amanda enough to be honest with her. After a week of reflection, I sat down and wrote Amanda a letter. I expressed my unconditional love for her, memories of the joy she had brought into our lives, my pride in her intelligence and determination. But I also established clear boundaries. I would no longer be her financial safety net. I would not pretend her behavior was acceptable when it wasn't. I offered a real relationship instead of a transactional one, but only if she was willing to meet me with honesty and respect. I delivered the letter to her office reception desk rather than mailing it, wanting her to receive it personally. She called within an hour, her voice tight with anger. How dare you write these things? You have no idea what pressure I'm under. Did you read the entire letter? I asked calmly. I got the gist. Read it, all of it. Then we can talk. I hung up gently, something I had never done before. 2 weeks passed without any contact. In that silence, I began focusing on myself for the first time in decades. I joined a support group for parents with estranged adult children, discovering I wasn't alone in my experience. Men and women from all walks of life shared similar stories of children who had grown distant, who had rejected family values, who had reduced complex relationships to transactional exchanges. Their pain echoed my own, providing validation and perspective. Williams called again, this time with an unexpected proposal. We're starting a mentorship program for at-risk youth, teaching construction skills. Would you be interested in volunteering? A month later, I found myself in a community center workshop, showing teenagers how to measure twice and cut once. Many came from challenging backgrounds, foster care, single-parent homes. They reminded me of Amanda at that age, hungry for guidance and stability. One boy, Miguel, had a natural talent for precision work. "Mr. Walker, look," he called one afternoon, proudly displaying a perfectly joined dovetail corner. "Outstanding craftsmanship," I told him, his beaming smile more rewarding than any paycheck I'd ever received. As spring turned to summer, 3 of my students secured apprenticeships with local contractors. Williams expanded the program, providing funding for more tools and materials. We began meeting monthly for lunch, our friendship developing around our shared values and experiences. My apartment, once a lonely space filled with regrets, now displayed thank you cards from students, photographs of completed projects, plans for future classes. I found a new peace with my circumstances and choices. Then, 6 months after that fateful dinner, an unexpected text from Amanda. "Happy birthday, Dad." Just those 3 simple words, but the title Dad felt significant after so long. I responded with measured warmth. "Thank you, Amanda. I hope you're well." A week later, another text. "Could we meet for coffee sometime?" We arranged to meet at a neutral location, a cafe halfway between her office and my apartment. Seeing her again after 6 months was a shock. She looked thinner, her designer clothes replaced by a simple blouse and slacks. Most noticeably, her perfect mask of confidence had slipped, revealing something more human beneath. The first moments were awkward, neither of us quite knowing how to begin. Finally, she spoke. "I want to apologize for what happened at Somerset House. It was inexcusable." I nodded, waiting for her to continue. "After that night, everything changed. I lost the promotion opportunity. Edward's family cut back their financial support, said I'd embarrassed them. We had to downsize to a smaller condo." She twisted her wedding ring nervously. "At first, I blamed you. It was easier than facing what I'd become." "And now?" I asked quietly. "Now I'm starting to see that night as a wake-up call." She met my eyes directly for the first time. I've been chasing acceptance from people who only valued what I could do for them. I became exactly like them without even realizing it. I listened without rushing to forgive, asking gentle questions about what she had learned. Slowly, the conversation warmed, becoming more honest than any we'd had in years. "Tell me about Mom," she said suddenly. "I feel like I've forgotten so much." I shared stories of Marie that Amanda had never heard or had forgotten. Her quirky habit of singing to plants while watering them. Her terrible attempts at knitting that resulted in mysteriously shaped scarves. Her fierce advocacy for patients who couldn't speak for themselves. Amanda asked questions about her early years before the adoption. Things she had never wanted to discuss before. I answered as honestly as I could, neither sugarcoating the difficulties nor dwelling unnecessarily on painful details. "Would you like to see what I'm doing now?" I asked as our meeting drew to a close. "I'm teaching construction skills to teenagers at the community center." Her visit the following week surprised me. She arrived in jeans and a simple sweater, watching with genuine interest as Miguel demonstrated the proper way to frame a window. Williams arrived during her visit, having stopped by to check on a new equipment donation. He acknowledged Amanda with professional civility, neither warm nor cold. "Miss Harrington, I trust you're well." "Mr. Williams." "Yes, thank you." Her response was subdued but dignified. As he toured the facility with me, he mentioned casually, We're looking for someone to head our community outreach programs, someone who understands both business and genuine community needs. The seed was planted, though nothing more was said that day. Weekly coffees with Amanda became our new ritual. She spoke of her struggles to rebuild her professional reputation, her re-examination of priorities. Edward joined us occasionally, revealing a more grounded side than I had previously seen. They had discussions about starting a family, Amanda's fears surfacing during one of our talks. "What if I'm a terrible mother?" she asked, vulnerability in her eyes. "Awareness is the first step to being better," I told her. "We all make mistakes. The question is whether we learn from them." 3 months after her first visit to the youth program, Williams offered Amanda the community outreach position. The salary was less than half what she had earned before, but the opportunity for redemption was priceless. She accepted with a humility that would have been unimaginable a year earlier. The first family dinner in my apartment felt momentous. Amanda brought cookies made from Marie's recipe, having found the handwritten card in a box of keepsakes. The conversation was sometimes awkward but fundamentally honest, the beginning of a new kind of relationship based on who we really were rather than who we pretended to be. As I watched Amanda and Edward helping my students with a community garden project the following spring, I reflected on the unexpected gifts that had come from that painful evening at Somerset House. The worst moment of our relationship had ultimately created the possibility of something authentic. Standing in the April sunshine, teaching young Miguel how to set fence posts properly, I felt Marie's presence beside me. She would have been proud of the journey, difficult as it had been. Amanda was finding her way back to herself, and I had found purpose beyond my role as her father. Sometimes, our worst moments become our best teachers. Sometimes, the path back to each other requires walking away first. 6 months after Amanda began her new position, the youth program had expanded to 3 community centers across Chicago. The workshop I had started with 10 students now served over 60 teenagers, many referred by juvenile courts or social services. 3 of my original students had secured full apprenticeships with local construction companies, their futures transformed by marketable skills and newfound confidence. My friendship with Williams deepened through monthly lunches where we discussed program expansion, shared business insights, and occasionally reminisced about the early days of our careers when success was measured in honest effort rather than dollar signs. My small apartment had transformed as well. The walls, once bare except for a few old family photos, now displayed dozens of thank you cards from students. "Mr. Walker taught me to measure twice and cut once, in carpentry and in life." One read. Another, "Thanks for believing in me when nobody else would." I had found a peace I hadn't experienced in years. The constant worry about Amanda, the gnawing sense of failure as a father, had given way to acceptance of both my limitations and my strengths. I had done my best. The rest wasn't up to me. Amanda's transformation was slower but equally profound. The brittle perfectionism that had characterized her for years gradually softened. Her designer wardrobe gave way to more practical clothes. Her speech lost the affected cadence she had adopted in her banking circles. Most importantly, she stopped hiding her background, no longer fabricating stories about fictional parents or denying her adoption. During one of our weekly coffees, she surprised me with news. "Edward and I are thinking about adoption." "That's a big decision," I said carefully. "We've been talking to an agency about older children, kids who might not otherwise find permanent homes." She stirred her coffee thoughtfully. "I keep thinking about how different my life might have been without you and Mom." The conversation turned to practical considerations, the challenges and rewards of adopting an older child. I shared honest stories of our early struggles, the bedtime fears, the hoarded food, the testing behaviors. It wasn't always easy, I acknowledged, but it was always worth it. When Williams unexpectedly joined us for coffee that day, Amanda asked thoughtful questions about balancing family and career, listening intently to his perspective as a father who had regrets about prioritizing work. "If I could do it again," he told her, "I'd miss fewer baseball games and school plays. The empire will always be there. Childhood won't." That spring, Amanda and Edward invited me to dinner at their new home, a modest house in a good school district rather than the luxury high-rise they had once occupied. The conversation turned to their adoption plans, now moving forward with a sibling group, 2 boys ages 7 and 9. "Are we crazy?" Amanda asked, real vulnerability in her question. "Taking on 2 at once?" "Probably," I laughed. "But the best things I've ever done seemed crazy at the start." She showed me the bedroom they were preparing, asking for advice about making the space welcoming but not overwhelming. "You did so many things right with me," she said. "I want to learn from that." The acknowledgement brought unexpected emotion. For years, I had focused on where I had failed her. I hadn't considered that she might remember the successes. The youth program continued to grow. Williams provided funding for a vocational training center where my students could gain certification in specialized construction skills. I found myself in the unexpected role of program director, mentoring not just teenagers but young instructors as well. Amanda took on a project connecting corporate sponsors with community initiatives, her financial expertise finding new purpose in stretching limited resources to serve more families. Edward, surprisingly, discovered a talent for grant writing, helping secure funding for program expansion. "We're more fulfilled now than when we were making 3 times the money," he admitted during a weekend when they both volunteered at a program workshop. One afternoon, I arrived at the center to find Amanda sitting with Miguel, now 18, and preparing for his contractor's license exam. She was helping him practice the business portions of the test, patiently explaining insurance requirements and bidding procedures. "Your dad taught me everything about building," Miguel told her. "Now I need to learn the business side." "My dad," she repeated softly, glancing at me with a smile that reached her eyes. "He taught me some important things too. Just took me a while to appreciate the lessons." Williams joined us later that day for a program evaluation meeting. His professional relationship with Amanda had evolved into cautious respect. He acknowledged her contributions to the outreach program with specific praise, something I knew he didn't offer lightly. "The family engagement metrics have improved 60% under your leadership," he noted. "Parents are becoming involved in ways we hadn't anticipated." Amanda accepted the praise graciously. "I had a good example of what family support can accomplish," she said, her eyes meeting mine briefly. After the meeting, Williams pulled me aside. "Second chances are rare in business," he said. "Your daughter is making the most of hers. She's finding her way back to who she really is," I replied. Later that month, Amanda and Edward finalized the adoption of their sons, Michael and David. The boys were cautious at first, their experiences in foster care having taught them wariness. I recognized in their careful observation of boundaries the same self-protective instincts Amanda had shown 3 decades earlier. At the small celebration afterward, Amanda introduced me to the boys. "This is your grandpa Johnny. He built houses for 40 years. Maybe he can teach you how to make things too." "Real houses?" David asked, his eyes wide. "Real houses, big buildings, bridges," I said. "Whatever you're interested in learning." Michael, the quieter of the two, studied me carefully before asking, "Will you still be here next week?" The question carried the weight of too many broken promises in his young life. I knelt to meet his eyes directly. "I'll be here next week, and the week after that, and for as many weeks as you want me around." Amanda's hand squeezed my shoulder, a silent acknowledgement of promises kept through decades. As the seasons changed, our new family configuration settled into comfortable patterns. Sunday dinners at my apartment became a tradition, the boys gradually relaxing into the security of consistent care. Amanda called for advice on everything from homework struggles to bedtime resistance. I found myself in the unexpected role of family elder, my experience suddenly valued rather than dismissed. "How did you handle it when I went through my silent phase?" Amanda asked during one particularly challenging week with Michael. "With patience and consistency," I told her, "and by letting you know it was safe to talk when you were ready." One evening as we finished dinner, David asked about the photo of Marie on my bookshelf. "Who's that lady?" Amanda answered before I could. "That's your grandma Marie. She was an amazing mother who taught me about kindness and courage. She would have loved you both so much." Later, as the boys helped Edward clear the table, Amanda spoke quietly. "I wish she could see all this." The family continuing. "She sees," I said simply. The transformation in our relationship hadn't come easily or quickly. There had been setbacks, difficult conversations, moments when old patterns threatened to reassert themselves. But with each honest exchange, each boundary respected, each genuine connection, we built something new from the ruins of what had been lost. Working alongside my students at the center, I often shared the wisdom those difficult years had taught me. The true measure of success isn't what you own or your job title, I would tell them. It's the integrity with which you live and the authentic connections you build with others. One afternoon, a new student asked how I had started the program. I found myself sharing parts of the restaurant story, careful to focus on the lessons rather than Amanda's behavior. Sometimes our worst moments become doorways to better paths, I explained. The important thing isn't avoiding mistakes, it's learning from them. As Amanda and her family prepared to host their first Thanksgiving in their new home, she called with a surprising request. Would it be all right if we invited Thomas and his wife? He mentioned not having family plans this year. The holiday gathering brought together an unlikely group: Williams and his wife, myself, Amanda's family, and Miguel, who had no family in the city. As we sat around the table, Michael suddenly announced, "We have to say what we're thankful for. That's the rule." When my turn came, I looked at the faces around the table, each representing a different chapter in my life story. "I'm thankful for second chances," I said simply, "and for the wisdom to recognize them when they arrive." Amanda's eyes met mine across the table, understanding passing between us without words. The journey from that painful night at Somerset House to this moment of genuine connection had been long and difficult. But sitting here now, I wouldn't change it. Even the hardest parts had been necessary to reach this place of authentic relationship. What about you watching this? Have you ever experienced a moment when painful honesty ultimately strengthened a relationship? Or when standing your ground, even with family, was the truest form of love? Share your story in the comments below. Sometimes our shared experiences can help others navigate their own difficult paths. And if this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more reflections on life's complicated journeys. Remember that it's never too late for healing to begin, and the most meaningful connections are built on honesty rather than pretense. Thank you for joining me today, and may you find the courage to embrace authentic relationships in your own life.